So while the encomienda system was used by Spain to govern its colonies, there was another system in place that sort of controlled the cultural and social aspects of the Spanish colonies in the New World, and that was the Casta system. The word casta is where we get the word caste from, and you can see why when you look at the system. So essentially, you think about the people who would be in the New World. You kind of have a few different groups. You've got people from Spain. You've got colonists who are from Europe and born in the Americas. And you've got natives and then soon after Africans who are brought in. And then mixes of those people in between. And all those people show up in this casta or caste system. At the top of this pyramid, you can see we have what are called the peninsulares. Peninsulares means those from the peninsula, by which we mean the Iberian Peninsula, where Spain is. So if you were born in Europe and you came to the New World, you were in that peninsulares caste or category. Let's say you were a descendant of Europeans, both your parents were peninsulares, well, then you would be a criollo or Creole. So you already have this difference in class of people who, even though it might be the same, ethnic group or race, in this case, European, because of just where they're born, they're already in a different caste. You would often have, because of the nature of the way Spain colonized it, right? They're sending over these conquistadors who are mostly young, unmarried men. Often they would intermix with the native people, so they would marry native wives and have children who were, part European, part native. And as time went on, that also happened with the enslaved or freed slave Africans. So you've got these groups of people of mixed descent, mulattos and mestizos. Mulattos would be people who are mixed European and African descent, and mestizos were those of mixed European and native descent. And then, of course, you would have people who were indigenous to the Americas and the African enslaved people who were brought over, Indians and Africans. And while the system at first was sort of informal, over time it often got very codified. What position you had on this ranking system, as it were, gave you certain legal or social privileges. In terms of sort of who determined this, there were the birth records of Spain and other countries in Europe at the time were really tied to baptismal records. So once babies were baptized, the priest would record this, and that became essentially the birth certificate for people. And you can imagine with how stratified this is, there's sort of a lot of complexity here, and some of the colonists got pretty focused on this. You had this whole series of paintings, or really a style of painting called casta paintings. People imagine, what if you have a peninsulare and a mestizo? So somebody who, their children are, 3/4 European and 1/4 native. What would that class be? Now, in reality, it wasn't quite that stratified, but there's kind of a lot of arbitrariness. If you've got people who were mestizo, but they might look more European, they might get put into a higher caste or class than somebody who was not, who was mestizo but looked more native. So this system's really, as you can see, tied to not only race and ethnicity, but also class. And that was true with sort of the legal and social impacts of this. If you were a peninsulare, you could hold pretty much any position. Peninsulares tended to be the governors and rulers in the colonial world. Creoles, their children, often couldn't hold the political positions they did. Then they could still own property, which was harder to do if you were one of the mixed classes, mulattos or mestizos. And over time, mestizos becomes almost the largest class or caste of people in the Americas just due to the intermixing of people there. But mestizos would often, resent people in the higher classes like Creoles because they, couldn't necessarily hold much property or hold any kind of government job. And then, let alone if you were an Indo or Africano, if you were native or African. Of course, often those people were enslaved or they were part of the encomienda system. In fact, in some cases, mestizos couldn't participate in some of the native governances. The Spanish sometimes made deals with neighboring tribes, and they could sort of rule themselves as long as they paid that repartimento. But sometimes mestizos got excluded from that. So there's a lot of social conflict here, and that's going to play a big role later as we get to the independence of the Spanish colonies. It's often driven by some of the economic and social conflict between these different groups of people. And it all goes back to this system that developed in colonial Spain.